Right. So I hope this time everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I'm going to share my screen also, confirm that as well, okay? So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
We can.
Okay. So let me start once again, okay? So in the last session, okay, what we had covered is we had created our first project, right? And we had defined our API based on the definition we had in Swagger Hub, right? So we had the definition in Swagger Hub, right? So based on that, we had created our definition here and we had added our URL and URI, right? So what is URI and URL? You must be remembering that. So the endpoint is the URL, okay? And the entire thing together, this address plus URL plus parameters and method constitutes URI, right? So while creating the project itself, we had defined URI and SOAP UI tool based on that URI created a sample request for you, okay? This one. So after adding that definition, based on that definition, we had created a test suite, right? And we had named it TS underscore get customer info, right? You can give it any name based on the requirement of your project, right? And how your team is maintaining the projects, right? Based on that, you can name it. Inside the test suite, we had created a test case, right? And we have named it as manual test cases. In manual test cases, we have created test step. We have added a REST request test step because we have to test a REST API, right? So we have added REST API and we gave it a name TC001 success case 1. Then we opened this test step and we tested it, right? We tested it. So we have got the data, a valid mobile number and a valid consumer ID, right? And we ran the service API. We received the response. So first time when we are testing it, we have to manually validate all the data, right? So you must have received this data that this mobile number belongs to which customer, what is the name of that customer from backend, right? Unfortunately, I don't have any database to show you that how you will get the data. So for now, you just assume that you have got this data in some format in Excel or somewhere where you already have the mobile number, the associated customer ID, full name, date of birth, email ID, and remarks, everything you already have before start of the test itself, okay? And now you have to validate what you have actually received with what you already have, okay? So we have received this. So we will validate it based on two things, based on a schema, right? This, we call it as a schema, okay? The contract, you remember? Every field is bounded by few rules that minimum length should be 10, maximum length should be 10, right? It is a required parameter or not, right? So there, the parameters can be of three types, okay? The required, optional, and conditional. Okay, what are those? I will try to give you one insight on that. So the parameters can be required. We can call it as mandatory also. Optional and conditional. So the name itself suggests what are these, okay? So the field which is required, without that your API will not work. That we call it as mandatory parameter or required parameter. Optional means you can pass it to see some other functionality, okay? Some more functionality in the API. But if you will not pass also, your API will work, right? Your API will work. So like in Facebook, right? You go to your friend list. Let me open my Facebook for you guys, okay? So that you can visualize it. So when I go to Facebook and I open my profile and I go to my friend list, I can see all the friend lists. So when we clicked on get friend list, the entire friend came, right? But in that API, we can further filter it with recently added. So we will send one flag with the API that get friend list, but so only recently added, right? So this recently added is an optional field, which you can pass to further filter the responses. You got it? What is optional? I hope you understood.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So conditional. Conditional is a field which is required only based on some specific value of other field. What is the meaning? Suppose if we are passing mobile number, okay, some a specific mobile number which is a corporate number, okay, which belongs to our own team, right? Like Bell is a telecom provider in Canada, right? So suppose Bell has few corporate numbers for their employees, right? So suppose if that number we are providing in the API input, then you can further send some other parameter also, okay, to show few more details. So that field will be known as conditional. So that field will become mandatory only when the type of mobile number is Bell employees number. Okay. So the conditional fields become required based on some certain conditions. Otherwise, they are also optional. Okay. Clear? Or you want some more example on conditional?
Could you repeat that, Shailesh? I would rather understand it.
Okay. Okay. So optional, you are clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. So conditional is a field which will be required only when some certain criteria comes in the API. Okay. So like, let me think of one more real life example. Okay. Mm, let me think. Okay. Give me a minute because I don't have any API to show you. Okay.
Friends with the same hometown or something.
Yeah. So let me think about it. Okay. Okay. So let me give you an example. Okay. So we all came on some visa, right, to Canada, right? Either we came on PR, we came on a student visa, or work permit, or visitor record, right? Right?
Yes.
So earlier we
Yes.
have one condition that if you have a student visa, right, you can work for 20 hours in a week, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So for anyone who came on visitor visa, right? If anyone come on visitor visa, they cannot work here, right? Unless they receive a student visa, right?
Yes.
Right? So that is the work permit is conditional. Everyone is not eligible to work, but as soon as you pass the visa type as a student, your work permit starts working, right? You can
Yes.
work here.
Yes.
So suppose one API where you have to pass the visa status. So when we are passing visa status, how many hours you are working will only become valid when the visa status is either a student or work permit or PR. But when we pass visitor, that field itself becomes not mandatory because for visitors, number of hours does not matter, right? So
Understood.
number of hours is conditional based on the visa type,
Understood.
right? Okay. So conditional also clear, right?
Yes.
So let us again continue with the API. So you have received one response, you will validate against the JIRA requirement, okay, acceptance criteria, Swagger contract. We call it as a schema, okay? Remember this. The contract is a very generic term which I used for you to understand in the beginning, but in the technical word, we call it as a schema or YAML, okay, or Swagger, okay. So this is a schema. So against the schema also we will validate it, and against what we will validate it? I messed it up. Yeah. Against the JIRA. right?
Jira
We have some
acceptance.
requirement here as well, right? So again, remember, let me note it down, put it down somewhere, okay? First, schema validation. Second, business logic. Third, enterprise standard. Okay, these three things are most important. Okay, first you will test. This is the verification. Okay, I told you that testing is verification and validation. So first you will verify whether API has been implemented as per contract or not. Okay, then you will do validation whether it is fulfilling the purpose for which it has been developed or not. Again, okay. First, you will verify whether your API is developed as per contract or not. This is verification for you, okay? Then you will validate whether your API is fulfilling the purpose for which it has been developed or not. Clear? Any question regarding these two?
No.
Good. Third thing what you will do is there is some enterprise standard which your company must have agreed on, okay? That when we are working, we will work based on some standards, right? Whenever any error message comes, that error message should comply with some error code error messages. So you remember I told you that you will receive such information in user guide, the error code and error description, status codes and everything, right? So these things are nowhere, right? These two things are nowhere, neither in Swagger nor in Jira. But still we have to do it because it is the standard which our companies follow, okay, while doing the development. That all the defects should be tracked, all the error messages should be tracked under some error code and error description, so that the same can be reflected in the front end. Let me show you that. Any website which needs password, any website like anything, it could be IRCC, okay, or any simple website, Twitter, okay, Twitter. So this is the problem with these websites. They take the login itself, okay. So what should I show you? Any website, can anyone suggest?
Yahoo.com, like
Yahoo.com, thank you. Yahoo.com. So we went to sign in, right? And we provided XYZ at abc.com, right? And we clicked on next. I told I am not a robot, and then I provided any password. See, what you are receiving, invalid verification code. So this is the error description which front end must have received from the API. And this description must be tagged with some error code. So front end team, when they will receive any error code, based on that error code, they will decide whether we have to further analyze the response or not, or if they already have that error code mapped, they will decide whether to show the error description or not. Okay? Everyone clear? These three things?
yes.
Okay. So see, tool is nothing. Tool you can learn in a day. Okay, there are a lot of material available, but these things you have to stick around. Okay, while you are testing. If you will talk about these things in any interview, interviewer will never ask you or think that you are faking your experience or anything. You need to be clear about these things. Your interviewer can ask you in testing, what are the things which you take care of? So you have to tell that we verify whether the API is working as per the contract or not. We validate whether API is working for what it has been developed or not. And we also validate whether our API is following our enterprise standard or not. Got it? This can be one of the interview question. Okay. So we went here, we started validation, right? So mobile number. It can be only of 10 digits, so it is working fine. Customer ID, we will go to our database and we will see whether this mobile number belongs to this customer ID or not. Suppose that is fine. We will validate the full name. Now here we will come and we will see the date of birth is fine as per the database. Customer has the correct database, but in Jira, we have one requirement which says the date of birth should only be in the format of month, and YYY, right? MMYYY format. Date should not be there, right? So the data is correct as per the database, but as per the business logic, it failed. So this is a defect, right? And that's why we logged one defect last day, if you remember. DOB is not received in agreed format, correct? Then we validated email ID and remarks against the data which we already have. Okay. So our manual testing for case one is done. We will again validate it with some other data also. Okay. We never trust only one test data. Okay. We test it for 3-4 set of test data, positive scenario. Okay. And then only we become confident. And how you will decide on that test data? So you will ask that how many kind of customers you have in the corporate. So you have to test for the customers, right? Customer's mobile number. So customer can be of any type. They can be your internal employees. They can be your customers, right? They can be any corporate. So many companies may have taken the connection of Bell for their entire floor, right? And they may be calling for some reason. So when you will gather the test data, you will take care of this. Okay, you will try to get at least one customer number from each segment, what type of customers you may have. Okay, that is how you collect the test data. If you will test with only one customer, okay, then it is not a good testing. You have to, being a tester, you need to be vigilant enough to, while collecting the test data itself, that you are providing the right coverage to the testing. If you are testing only with one customer who is a normal consumer, right, a normal user of your phone, telecom company, then you are missing out on, so like remarks, right? So remarks can only the user can give. Your internal employee cannot give you any remarks, right? From the last call. You think that if you will call your help desk, the company's help desk, you will be rude or something. No, right? So these things may not appear for your internal employees, right? So that's what means. I'm just giving you an example. While collecting the test data in the first few days of the sprint, so what I told you, the actual development will happen in the first few days of the sprint. For the first few days, you will not be having the working API. So in the beginning days, what you will do, you will write your use cases, you will write all the possible test cases, and you will collect test data, right? So here you can further classify your test cases: success underscore enterprise customer, success underscore internal customer, success underscore corporate customer. Are you getting it what I'm trying to say? The same API will work for all type of customers, right? So while collecting the test data, you should think, okay? So developer might, while developing, he don't think about the real scenarios, okay? He has got one requirement that my API should accept a customer number, a consumer ID, a mobile number, a consumer ID, and it should give you this response. This is all developer thinks. But being a tester, you should be able to visualize the real-time situations, okay? When this API will be used, consumed, right? So when you will think about it, first you will ask the question, right? So help desk will receive call from which type of customers, what type of mobile numbers will come. So anyone from Bell also can call the help desk, right? And he may be the internal customer of the Bell, internal employee of the Bell. Someone sitting in Bramilia Mall or any other mall, right? The Bramilia shops are there, right? Some customer wants some instruction from help desk and he will call from his phone, landline phone or something. Then it should work. The help desk should be able to fetch the data of that employee also, right? If anyone will ask that what is this plan, whether I can offer this plan or not to the customer, do you think the help desk should help anyone? They should validate first whether that inquiry is coming from the right place or not. Correct? The purpose of this API is to validate the customer, right? When you call any of your telecom provider, they must be validating you. What is your date of birth, sir? What is your month of birth? What is the year of birth, right? What is your full name? What is your registered email ID? So the purpose of this API is that only, right? So while collecting the test data, you should be thinking about all the real-time scenarios when this API will get consumed. Okay, enough for this situation. After this, we will create all the negative scenarios. So here what we are doing, here what we have done, we have validated the schema as well as business logic. Now we have to test the enterprise standard of the error codes. So we have many test cases written here, negative test cases. So all the test cases we will execute. So I was hoping that you will see these test cases at least to understand how we write the test cases. That's why I wrote it for you. So if you have not already gone through it, please go through it and try to understand what kind of testing we do for the negative scenarios. So one field can have many possibilities. Let me go back to the Swagger. So one field, mobile number. So what can come as a mobile number, right? What we have to validate? It can have 9 digits, it can have 11 digits, but the right is 10 digits. So we will pass 9-digit ones. I have told you the maximum error occurs around the boundary, right? So we will test with 9 digits of mobile number. We will test with 11 digits of mobile number, right? You should get a proper error message. We will not pass mobile number and see whether we are getting a proper response or not. Like in Yahoo, if I will not pass anything and I will do verify, see what it is saying. Please provide a verification code. The error was different when I was giving something which was invalid. See, invalid verification code. It is not giving you the same error message when you are trying to send a blank thing. That means this verification code is mandatory field, right? So this validation is being done by Yahoo, right? This one, whether it is required or not, correct? After that, it depends on the enterprise what they are validating. You can see that, okay? You can visualize that. See, I have passed something which does not exist in their system. It is throwing invalid verification code. That means they have different error scenarios, right? To handle. Same way, if you will not pass, you will pass a non-existing customer number, right here. This customer mobile number does not exist. So if we will pass this, we are getting MOB1001 and no customer found. So we assume that this is the right error code. So you will receive this in a tabular format here. Okay. So you can validate against that data, whether the error code and error description are matching as per the enterprise standard or not. Same way, we will create another test case. I thought that you all will practice this, but as you have not practiced, I am again telling you all these things, okay? We will go to our test case again and see what is this test case. Mobile number having more than 10 characters. So we will test that. TC004 underscore mobile having 11 characters, right? We will attach it to the definition and we will create it. So see, one test case got created here. Now what we will pass is we will pass 11 digits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and one more, 11. So we are passing 11 and we will trigger it. So see what we have received. Mobile number should be exact 10 digits long. We will again go to the enterprise standard table and we will validate whether it is matching or not. If it is not matching, that is a defect. If it is matching, we are good. Okay. And I have also told you to add the assertions. So this is a negative test case. So expected is 400, but see what we are getting, 500 internal server error. So what is this? This is a
Defect.
defect.
The defect.
Defect, right? So we will again go to the Jira. This I wanted you all to see, okay? But unfortunately, we didn't get time. That's fine. So we will go back to Jira, and what we will do, we will create another defect, okay? So here in enterprise one, you will get a direct option to clone it, but I think in the free version of Jira, they don't have given that option. Okay, so you can directly clone from the defects. Let me see whether they have given that option or not. No, they have not given that option. Let me see here. Clone. Okay, so clone option they have given. So either you can create a new defect or you can clone from the existing defect. So cloning will save your time because you need not to create everything, right? You just need to rename it. Sorry. Clone it and mention defect in improper HTTP status code. What we call that thing? HTTP status code. Improper HTTP status code received when more than 10 characters, digits passed in mobile number field, and clone it. So one more defect will get created here. Okay, so let's see it got created or not. So we went to the main story and we will see. So see, this defect got created. Now you have to open this. Open it and change the description. So now what we have done is send request with mobile number having more than 10 digits. You can stop me anywhere where you're finding it difficult to understand, okay? Expected response was 400 bad request with proper error code and description. This was the expected. Actual, you are getting 500 internal server error, right? What request you have used, what response you have received, you can mention everything in the defect itself. So the request used was, we will always copy from raw, okay? From the request also and response also. Raw will give you the entire detail, the header, the method, everything. Developer will not come back to you asking what data you have used, what URL you have used. He can see the defect and he will come to know about everything. Same way for response as well, we will capture the entire response in the raw and then we will paste it here. Right? Environment was as it is, so we will keep it as it is. So further things, some cosmetic changes you can do to highlight the headers, right? So these things you can highlight so that it will be more readable for the person who will be referring your defect, right? And save it. So, and you have to assign it to the developer. So because you have already cloned from the previous defect, so all these things are already done. Okay. All right. So let's go back here again. So now, like this, we will create all the test cases. In assertion, we will go and we will add, okay? So what was the expected? We will go to compliance status and standard, and we will define invalid HTTP code as 500. This is not accepted. And valid one also you can add. You can go to compliance status and standards, scroll down, valid HTTP status code, and you can add 400. For this negative scenario, 400 was expected, right? but we are not receiving. That's why it is failing. Many things you can add here, okay? You can go to the assertion and you can review all the options which are available here. I was under expectation that you will ask me a few questions around these things, but as you have not practiced, I request you all to practice this weekend, okay? At least open these things and see, and if you have any question, ask me, okay, in the next session. We will have one more session on Monday, okay? But if you will not practice it, all the effort which we all are putting in these sessions will go waste, okay? After 7 days, you won't be able to remember anything, okay? So like this, you can add many assertions. All right. So this was our manual test case. Okay. Now, first round of testing is complete. Suppose you have tested everything, okay, in SIT environment, and you have reported the defect also. So now developer will start working on those defects, right? He will start working on those defects. You will again have some time, right? Until he fixes those defects. Do you think that developer will be able to fix it within an hour or 2 hours? No, right? Because there
No.
can be many defects. And there you will never face any ideal situation where you will not be able to find defect if you are doing it right, you are doing a right testing, okay? Defects will always be there because developer's perspective is only logic. Yours is many things. Schema validation, business logic. Developer works only on this thing, business logic, and he refers a schema validation, but he don't give that minute attention to these things, okay? It is testers' work to do the due diligence. You have to study the Swagger, okay? You have to validate the API against the Swagger. You have to analyze the business logic, okay? So your responsibility is more than the developer, okay? Because you are the layer of validation. If you will miss it, the code will move to the higher environment with defects, and the obligation will be yours. If anything comes back to your Scrum team that it was not fulfilling the purpose, the questions will be asked from the testers, not by the developers. Developers have to fix it, but you have to provide the answer that why it was missed. And if more occurrences happens like this, okay, you will be in trouble. Okay, so that's why while planning the test cases, you should do all the due diligence. You should think from all the perspective, all the possible use cases, okay, all the test data which you can be used to test it. Okay, you should not be doing any casual work. For one response, you should give at least 10-15 minutes to analyze all the fields, whether the spelling is correct or not. Many people only insist on values. The spelling should be as per the Swagger. You have to validate these things also, even the casing. And one golden rule of testing, okay? Never assume anything, okay? Don't assume that it must be working as per the requirement. Test it, okay? If the day you will start assuming, you will find a trouble for yourself, okay? So testers don't have a privilege to assume anything, okay? There is a popular saying that in God we trust, everything else we test. Okay, in testing we say that. Apart from God, everything else we test. So going back to SOAP-UI again. So all this, suppose we have completed all the test cases, whatever we have planned, okay? We have executed everything and we have logged our defects, okay? I request you all to go through the sheet. I have already attached it in the Google Drive, okay? Go through each test case, try to understand how I have written the test cases. So whenever any field is concerned about any API, okay, when you are doing in the real time, you have to think from that perspective that how many type of test cases I can write around it. Okay. So there are fields, right? There are fields. There are fields, mobile number. So how many test cases you will write around it? You have to think from the schema perspective, from business logic perspective, from test data perspective, right? All the perspectives you have to tick that checkbox. Whether I have completed all the schema validation or not, whether I have fulfilled all the business logic or not, whether I have tested with all possible type of customer mobile numbers or not. around every field, every combination, you have to ask yourself this question while planning the test cases itself. Now, you have completed the testing, manual testing. Now you have to automate it for the future purpose, right? So how to automate it? First thing, you have to read this Excel sheet, right? You have to read this Excel sheet. You have to do something so that this sheet should be read automatically, and it should read the mobile number and fills it there automatically, which you are doing it manually here right now. What were doing here, we were manually providing the
Manual
data here,
testing.
right?
Yes.
So what automation is supposed to do? It should automatically pick the data from Excel sheet and it should paste it here, right? First
Yes.
thing, you have to read the data, you have to pass the data, right? Second thing, you are validating it manually. Your automation should take care of all these validations, correct? And verification and enterprise standards, right?
Yes.
And if anything fails, it should show you what failed.
Yes.
So three parts, okay? Passing the data, doing the verification, validation, and reporting. Three parts of automation. What are the three parts? Passing the data,
Data.
verification and validation, and reporting. This is the ultimate purpose of any automation. Okay, there can be few more things also. Okay, but these are the basic things which should be covered as part of automation. Otherwise, there is no value of any automation. Okay, so first thing first, what we have to do, we have to read this Excel sheet, right? First, we have to read this Excel sheet, we have to extract the data, and we have to pass the data. Okay, how to do that? We had created one automated test case as well. Okay, and what we have done is we have created, I will do it from scratch. Okay, don't worry. Let me delete this test suite and we will do it again. But I request you all to please practice it. Okay, otherwise all the effort which I have put and you are also putting will go waste. Okay, so create a new test case, name it automated test cases or test case. Okay, so in our manual test cases, we were having one request for each test case, right? One test step for each test case. Here we will have only one test step for all the test cases. What we will do, we will add one step. We will select the REST request. We will give it a generic name, API or scenario, anything. Scenario or API or anything, whatever fancy name you like. Okay, you can give any name to it, and you will bind it to the definition which we already have here, right? We have defined one definition. We will bind it to the definition, so it will pull all the parameters which we have already defined. Now, how to read the data? This is your open source software, SOAP UI. Okay, so it don't have much facilities, so you have to a script. A little bit of script is needed. What you will do, we do a scripting in Groovy language here. Okay, so where is Groovy? Here is Groovy. So what we will do, we will give it a name or keep it Groovy script. That's fine. For now, we are giving it data source. So to use the already created libraries and classes of Groovy, okay, we have to import few things. We have to import few things. And no one remembers, frankly speaking, okay? Even the very good programmers also don't remember the exact classes and libraries, okay? Google helps a lot. So don't feel bad that I have to remember all these things. No, you need not to, okay? Just you should know from where to search, okay? So I'm providing you all these things in my course, okay? So don't worry about that. So let me paste it from, I have created it already. So let me copy it from there. So let me copy the entire thing. Otherwise I have to come here again and again. Okay. And the format is Groovy, right? Leave it. So fine. So these are the things which we need. Okay. Wait. Let me copy this and paste it in our newly created data source Groovy script. So this is our data source script, right? So we are importing the already implemented libraries and classes, okay, in Groovy. So what are these? It is good to know about it. Okay, so we have Groovy utilities. Okay, so we are importing that function in our script. We will use the functions defined under this library. Okay, while doing our assertion. Then we have to read one Excel sheet, right? We have our test cases in Excel sheet. So we will import JXL. Okay, this is a library which exposes a lot of functions to read and write to the Excel. Okay, read from the Excel. We have another inside JXL also only. We have another function JXL write. So actually this will also fulfill the purpose, but we are importing this as well additionally. JXL.write.asterisk. Asterisk means everything, all the functions inside this. JXL.asterisk means JXL and import all the functions of JXL. Then what we have to read? You will read the data from Excel, right? But against what you will validate? You will validate against? You will validate against? What is this? JSON response.
Language.
JSON response. So you have to read this JSON as well in your script, correct? So for that, we will use one more class. Let me close all these unnecessary tabs. JSON slurper, okay? So inside Groovy itself, Groovy provides you facility to use one library, groovy.json slurper. Okay, and forget about it for now. Okay, hash map, it will be needed in the future, but it is also a one library of Java utils. Okay, so we have imported this as well. So now what we have to do? First, we have to read the Excel. So I have already created for you guys. Okay, so create a file instance first. Okay, so let me copy this first and then I will explain to you. So wherever you put double slash, okay, or slash asterisk, this is just a comment, and close it with asterisk and slash. So anything inside these two characters will be considered as comment. It is not a logic or a script. Or the other way is just put two double slashes. Okay. So if you have multiple line of comment, use this format. Okay. Use this format. Everything inside this will be used as a comment. But, or if you have only a single line of comment, use this format, double slash. Okay, double slash means single line comment, and slash asterisk slash gives you a facility to put multi lines of comments. Okay. So whenever you go through any script, you should be aware that what these things, you should not think about, you should not think that this is a code. Don't waste time around this, but to understand this, what this, the code below this thing, like I have written, create a file instance. So now you know that we are going to create a file instance. Okay. So here, what we are doing is, so everything, all the test cases are running in one context. What is that context? our test case. Our test case is one context. Inside that, all the steps are running, right? So first of all, we are reading the context inside our script with the Groovy utils. So we have created one variable. This is def. Def means define. We are defining one variable. Variable is nothing, one container to save the value. Okay. The people from the computer science background must be aware of what is variable. Okay. There are different ways to define a variable in different languages. In Groovy, we define the variables with def. Okay. Def is a generic annotation, and it is a very smart annotation. Whatever will be the format, it will save it in the same format. So we need not to define it as a string or integer or float or double. Okay. So whatever you will is the default format of the field which you are going to save within that variable. It will take that format itself. Okay. So first we are reading the context. If you are not aware what is going on, don't worry. Okay. Just keep it handy in any notepad and practice it 4 or 5 times. If you'll practice it slowly, you will start understanding it. Okay, what each script is doing, and that is all what you are supposed to know. Okay, in today's world, everything has been, all the tools has become so smart. Okay, you need not to code manually much, but you should be able to understand what the code is doing. If you know what the code is doing, you can get the code from anywhere, from Google, from friends, from anywhere. But you should be able to understand what you want to achieve. And if any code is there on the Google or something, you should be able to understand it. Then only you can copy it from there, right? So main purpose, what we are trying to do, first we are trying to read the file. Okay, our file is saved somewhere, so we will read it from there. Okay, so for your so we had one test case, right? Test case document. But do we have any consumer ID here? No, right? Do we have any expected HTTP status code here? Do we have any expected customer ID here? No, right? This is our test case document. This is not our test data. So we will create one more file, okay? And see how we maintain our project. We create one folder with any name, okay? With like first project we are creating right now, right? So you can give it a name, first project. Inside that, you can create a subfolder data. Inside data, you can create a subfolder, the environment, okay? Don't see these files, these are unnecessary, okay? So with the name of SIT, so you must maybe using two environments also for your testing. So the data will also differ with the environment, right? So for SIT, we have created one folder. Inside SIT, I have created one data source. So what is this data source? Let's see. It is very similar to test cases. We will write same test case ID, test case name, test case description. But now we will introduce one more field, test type. So the success scenarios, we will define it as positive test type. Okay, and then we will pass the first input parameter, second input parameter, then expected HTTP status code, expected customer ID, expected date of birth, expected error code for negative scenarios, expected error description for negative scenarios. Okay, same test case document we will copy and we will add the columns here. Okay, based on the Swagger and Jira, you already know what is expected, right? Of each test case and what input parameters you have to pass and what type of test case you have written, whether it is a negative scenario, error scenario, or a positive scenario. You already know all these things. So I will upload this thing in Google Drive. You analyze it, how I have written the test data source. Okay. Now we have to read this file. Okay. So this must be having one location, right? It is saved at some location. It is saved inside users, Salish Singh, FWIC training, demo, data, SIT, and then you will find your file. So that's what we have to read. So what we will do, we will define one variable project directory, and Groovy reads the parent directory where your project is saved. When you save your project, when you do save as, See where it is getting saved, right? So this directory, your Groovy will read for you with the help of Groovy utils library. This is what we had defined, right? We had initiated one object of Groovy util class. And now we are using that object to read the project path, Groovy util dot project path. Okay. So now we know where our project path is, but where our project is here, directly here, right? Directly inside demo folder, not inside data, right? Not inside data. Our project is outside the data folder, right? Now we will define our environment. And from where we are reading our environment? From the project property. So for that, you have to create one property. So we will go to test step. We will right click, add a step, properties. This is one way to define. Another way is for any test case, if you will go to select that test case and go to the bottom, see here the properties. Can you see it? Properties. So you can add custom properties directly here as well. Okay. But reading that property will be difficult because you have to give that hierarchy that this is test case property. Okay. You can define here as well. You can click on plus, you can add env and pass SIT value here. But we are not doing that way here. Okay. We will create one explicit properties file here, add a step, properties. We will give it a name or keep it properties only. Okay. Properties. Now inside this, we will create one or environment. Give it a name, environment. And which environment we are using? SIT.
SIT.
Right. Again, we will create one more. SIT. SIT is just a name, right? SIT is just a name. SIT must be having one URL, right? Endpoint. So URL. So what is the URL? Local host 8080. For now, I am
8080.
testing everything on my local system. So that's why local host. Otherwise, you will get a proper SIT URL. Okay. So these two things we have created. What else we will need? What else we will need? After project directory, we have already read the project directory. We have already read the environment. Anyone knows why we are defining it? We
The
have to go to
contract
the project directory. Then we have to go to the data folder, and inside data folder, what is the name of this folder?
SIT.
Environment, right? We may have another folder with the name of QA, right? So we have to go inside this folder. That's why we are reading the environment, which environment we are testing for. Then we will need the name of this Excel sheet. And after that, we need the name of this data sheet. One Excel can have multiple sheets, right? Right? You can have multiple sheets, correct? Can you see?
Yes.
So the name of the data set you need, right? So what we will create again in the properties, seat name, and we will pass the seat name as, what was the seat name? Get customer info. Get customer info. For now, let's keep this. We will create more properties whenever we need it. Okay. So we had created project directory, we had created environment and read the environment from properties. See how we are reading it. This is the way to read the property inside the same test cases. So our test case is automated test case. Inside that, we now have properties. Move it up. Okay. Properties. So what we have done, dollar curly braces, inside that the name of the step, and inside that step, what is the property name? Environment. That is how we read it. This is the format. And what is context? Context is which context you are running it. Context is a way to read the properties of other steps inside the same test case. So what we are doing is we are going context expand. We are expanding the context, and what we are expanding? The value of environment inside properties. Okay. So now this env, okay, and what, suppose you want to see what we have stored. So there is one way to print the things. Okay. What is that? Log dot info. Log dot info space and pass the name of this variable and see what it has read. Let's see whether it works or not. So see, it has read for you, correct? SIT. You can give it a name. In double quotes, you can write anything. Environment is, and if you have to concatenate string and one variable, you have to use this plus sign in between. Okay, so this is a string which we are passing, and we are passing one variable as well. So in between, you have to give a plus sign. Okay, so clear the logs. See, you must be seeing all these things. What I'm doing, I'm right clicking here in the log and I'm clearing it. So all the past things gone. Now run it. So see, it has printed environment is SIT, right? So this is the way you can validate whether my script worked or not, whether env has read it or not, right? Again, now we are reading the data folder. So we already have the project directory. Inside that we have data folder. So what we have done is project directory plus data. The name of the folder inside project directory is, what was the name of the folder?
Data.
Data. So we have hard coded it. Okay, you can further read it in some variable, but for now I have hard coded it. And after that, again, I am putting a concatenation sign, right? And we are passing env. So now what it has done is it has read the project directory slash data slash SIT, right? If you will print data folder, what it will print? Let me clear it. So see, I'm printing data folder here. What it is printing? The entire path, right? Till FWIC training, our project path was there, project directory was there. Then we had concatenated data. So data, and then the environment is SIT, right? Now we are creating a file inside our script. So due to JXL class, we can directly use file object. We can create a file object. Okay. So we are creating a file object with the name Excel file. You can give any name to this. Okay. And we are creating a new file. And what we are passing inside this? Our data folder, right? And inside data folder, what is the name of our sheet? Data source.xls. What is the name of the field? Data source, right? So now our file is created inside our script. Now, what kind of file it is? Is it a text file or movie file, a MP3 file? What kind of file it is? Data source? Anyone? What kind of file this is? You already know it, right? What
Excel sheet.
XML.
XLS.
What is XLS? Excel sheet, right?
Excel sheet.
We opened it for you. This is Excel sheet. But our script knows about it? No. We have just read that file location, right? But now to read the file, we need to create a workbook. We call Excel as workbook also, okay? So I already have the code ready-made with me. So now we will create one workbook instance, okay? So now we are creating a workbook instance. So workbook is an a class defined in JXL library. Okay. We are just using that workbook. We are creating one object, workbook object. We have given it a name WB. You can give any name to it. And now we are reading it. Workbook dot get workbook at where? Excel file, which we have created, right? At this location, go and get the workbook. So now our workbook is also available inside our script. We have already crossed the time, but let me cover few more things. After this, inside the workbook, what is there? What is this? Seat, right? I told you it can have multiple seats, right? Guys, you're understanding it or not? And not understanding the code is fine, but what I'm trying to tell you, are you understanding that or not?
Yep.
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Yes. So now we have to read the seat. These things, once you have memorized, it will be useful for your entire career, okay? It is very simple. First, have created a file. Based on what type of file it is, you have created one more instance. It was workbook. If you have to read some notebook, text file, you have to create one text file. Okay. Now we have to create an instance for seat. Just to save time, I have already done this in advance. Okay. So what we will do is, so there are two ways to do it. Okay. I will tell you both the ways. Wait. Comment I have not copied. So now what we are doing, we are loading the data sheet. So there are two ways to do it. Directly, you can pass the name of the data set like get customer info. But what we have done is we have defined the name inside the properties file, right? Get customer info. It may be possible that you will refer some other sheet also in future if anything changes, right? So that's why I have created one variable here, seat name. So now we will read that seat name first. So we have defined one input data seat variable, and we are reading from context.expand properties input data seat name. What is input data seat name? So here seat name only. So in this context, I have copied from somewhere else. So we will give it a name, seat name. Okay. Whatever the name is there in the properties file, seat name. So now our variable has read the name, seat name. Now we are passing this variable inside seat object. Okay. So seat is one object which we are creating using JXL class. Okay. We gave it a name seat itself. You can give any ABC name also here. Okay. And what we are doing is we are going to our workbook. This workbook we had created, right? And we are using a function get seat. And which seat to get? The name of stored in this variable. What is the name stored in this variable? What we have defined in the properties, get customer info, right? So now we have imported the file, we have created a workbook instance, we have created a seat instance. Now we have to read the parameters, right? Now we have to read the parameters. Let me copy everything now, okay? This MacBook is making me crazy. I recently switched to MacBook, okay? I'm not very fluent with MacBook as of now. That's why I'm struggling sometimes, okay? Please bear with me. So don't see all these things. So now what we will do is we are going to read from the Excel sheet, reading data from Excel sheet. So for that, what we need variables, right? We need variables. Read. What variables we need? A variable to store mobile number, a variable to store consumer ID, a variable to store status code, a variable to store customer ID, and other things, right? Like DOB, error code, and error description. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 at least 7 variables you need, right? So that's what we have done. We have created, we have a test case ID also for reporting purpose we need it. So we have test case ID and all also, right? What we may need for reporting: test case ID, test case name, test type, okay, and other things. So that's what I am reading. We have defined a variable for test case ID, one for test case name, one for test case type, one for mobile number, one for consumer ID, one for HTTP status code, one for customer ID, one for DOB, one for error code, and one for error description. Now, we know our Excel sheet, but our script does not, right? So we have to tell our script at which column number it is, okay? What is the column number of this? Column A?
Yes.
What is the column number? See, this is the row. This is the row. Okay. This we call it as row. This we call it as column. Okay. Row and column. So what is the number of this column? This is the first column, right? A.
A.
Right? But in a scripting, everything starts with the index 0. Okay. So the index of this is 0. This is 1. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4. This is 5, 6, 7, and so on. Similarly, the row also starts with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. In Excel, you must be seeing this as 1, but a script understands it's a 0. Index is 0. Like our floor starts, right? Ground floor, we call it as 0 floor, right? In your apartments, you must have seen the floor number starts with 0. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. The same way in our script also, the index starts from 0. So we will define the index of each columns in our script. What we have done is test case name index is, test case ID index is 0. We have created one variable index test case ID, and we have given the exact index 0, then one for test case name, then one for test case type. Okay. And similarly for mobile number, consumer ID, status code, index customer ID, DOB, error code, description. So all these things are very easy, right? We have just created the variables. We have just created the variables. And you must have observed I have given int. Int, what is int? So wherever you know exactly that the thing is going to come in integer value, numeric value, okay, we define it as int. And see what we are doing is here, the first thing, we are calculating the total number of rows in our sheet, total test, how many tests we have to execute, right? So what we are doing is we are going to our sheet, which we have already read, and we are doing a function get rows. So how many rows it has? How many rows it has? Count it. 1, 2, 10. 10 rows we have. But how many test cases we have? How many test cases we have?
9.
9, because the first one was header, right? But your script does not know from where to start. You have to tell it, right, from where to start. So that's why total number of tests are total number of rows minus 1. Can you see minus 1 I am doing here? So this function has got you 10 rows. But how many test cases you have? 9, right? Because 1 is header at the top. We have to ignore that row while reading the test cases. So minus 1. And apart from that, everything we have defined for reading the values from Excel sheet and their respective index numbers. Now, it will be a bit complex for the people who are new, okay? But please concentrate. This is the last topic of the day, okay? So what we have to do is we have to go to each row, right? After completing first row, we will go to second row, then third row, then fourth row. Then what we are trying to do? Iterate, right? Iterate through the test cases, right? We are iterating, right? 2 to 3, 4, 5. We will go till we reach the end of the file. Here. Correct? Correct or not? We have to iterate, right? Our script needs to start from here and it will keep on executing till it meets the end of the file, right?
Yeah.
So for that, we have to write one for loop. What is for loop? What is for loop? So inside for loop, we are defining I is equal to 1. What is I? I is again a variable, okay? And it will start from 1. Why it is starting from 1? Because 0 is our header, right? If we will define it as 0, it will start from the header. So we are starting from I is equal to 1 and I should be less than or equal to total test. So what is total test? 9, right? We have already read it. Total number of rows minus 1. So 9. So it will start from first row and it will execute till it reaches the 9th row. Okay. And it will keep on increasing till it meets the last row. Right. So this is from where it should start. This is for how many times it should iterate. And suppose if you want to skip after 1, the counter should increase, right? I should increase to 2, then 3, then 4, unless it reaches 9. So that's why we are increasing the value of I every time. And now inside this for loop, see, this is the start of the for loop, the curly braces. We are reading the mobile number from seat now. We have already defined the variables. Now we are going to read. Seat we have already created, correct? Seat dot get cell, okay? Where to get cell? How you define the Excel sheet? Suppose I ask you the value address of this cell. What is the address of this cell?
C3
C3. So first what you told? The column.
column,
And then you told
the row.
row. C3, right? That is the address of this cell. Correct? Same way, inside this, we will pass the column index number, which we have already read, correct? We have defined, right? 5. So what is that column 5 here? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, correct? And then the value of I. From where the I is starting for the first iteration? 1, right? See the for loop. I is starting from 1. So it is F1 here. Correct? I told you a script will recognize it as 0, okay, the first row. So for the script, it is the 1. So it went to that cell and extracted the content of that cell, okay, and stored its value inside mobile number variable. Same way we did for consumer ID, HTTPS status code, customer ID, DOB, error code, error description, test type, test case ID, test case name. Okay. We have read from Excel sheet. Now we have to store it because we have to pass it to the scenario step, right? We have to pass it to the scenario step. How to pass these values to the scenario step to run? We have to store it somewhere, right? We have to store it somewhere. For that, you need another properties, insert a step. Properties, select properties. Give it a name, iteration data, which will keep on changing with each row, okay? Before passing it to the scenario. Now here, don't create anything and just move it before the, sorry, iteration data, move it before the scenario. So now what we are doing is, so this is the test runner. Test runner is nothing. What you are seeing in the interface is the test runner, okay? Test runner dot test case. What is the test case for this test runner? Automated test case, right? That is the name of your test case, right? From test runner, it went to test case, and now from test case, it is going to test steps. What are the test steps? These four: properties, data source, iteration data, scenario. And the value of test steps would be iteration data. Okay, we reached here. And now we are setting the property values as test case name, okay, consumer ID, mobile number, right? Everything we are setting up there, okay? So consumer ID we have repeated twice, so you can remove it or just comment it. If you will comment it, it will not be considered in the script. So we are passing the consumer ID and mobile number which are needed to be passed to the scenario for running it. Correct? So we are stopping it here. So what we have learned today in automation: how to read a file, how to create a workbook instance, how to create a seat instance, how to define the variables, and how to read from the Excel sheet using the seat variable, okay, seat instance. And now we are passing it to the properties value. We are saving the value what we have read from the Excel sheet. Excel sheet is external to SOAP UI. We are reading from external source, and now we are saving to the internal format, okay, before passing it to the scenario. Correct? So we will take a stop here and see the next step is running the scenario. Okay. So we will start this on the Monday session. I'm very sorry. I have planned for 6 sessions only, but I think we need 2 more sessions. So Monday and Wednesday, probably we will have 2 more sessions. Okay. So everyone is fine with Monday session, or you want it at some other time?
Yeah, we are fine.
Yeah, we are fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Monday is fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm just stopping the recording. You please stay, okay, for 2 minutes. I'm just stopping the recording, and then we will discuss if anyone has any question or not. So this is the official